What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next, we are going to be going over the top sales that I saw last week. This was an especially interesting set of sales because these are the books that went in the weekly Heritage Comic auction directly after their big signature auction. And oftentimes, when you have that, you have some bigger books coming up for sale, some more unique books that you might not see every week. So these are some big books, and it was some surprisingly strong sales. Let's check these out. All right. So before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. So if you haven't watched one of these videos before, what I do is I watch the weekly Heritage Comic auction. This is an auction that obviously comes up every week. They sell Golden Age on Sunday, Silver Age on Monday, and Bronze through Modern on Tuesday. These auctions are normally pretty big regardless. You usually have quite a few books. Anything up to $30,000, $40,000 comics are typically part of this, and anything down to under $100. I mean, there's stuff across all ranges, but this one had a lot more notable books than what I would typically see, and that's because it was directly after this signature auction. When you have that, a lot of those books that don't quite make the cut for the signature auction, what I've seen is they tend to get moved to that next weekly auction, and that's what we see here, and that's why we have a lot of pretty big books, a lot of Silver Age Grails, some Golden Age stuffs, some big Bronze Age books as well. And this was a pretty strong auction. I wasn't sure how it would turn out because it was directly after that signature auction. And I know sometimes people wonder if people are going to have spent all their money, and so then you're going to get deals in this one. That's not what I saw, at least for these bigger books. So what we're going to be talking about is more or less the top 13 sales. There's a few I'm leaving out just because they're duplicates. They sold for $188,880. I had them estimated at $169,000. So on average, beat my estimate by 12%. A few went low, but most of them went high. It was a strong auction. Now let's check out the auction recap page here. So I always show this one just because it gives you an idea how big these weekly auctions are. You can see here the total auction sales were $766,364. And this is week after week. Now, normally I see this on the lower end around 500,000, but typically around 600. And so that's why I'm saying this was a little bit bigger than what I normally see. And I can probably attribute that to being right after that signature auction. And so 766,000, pretty big weekly auction. Now let's get into the first book here. And you can see it right on the top of the list. And it's this Amazing Fantasy 15, a 4.5. It also has a little note here that you can see on the label where it says Stanley 91 written on first page in pen. So that means that on the interior, there is a Stanley signature. It gets a blue label. It does not get a green label, anything like that. If it had been on the cover, might get a green label, but at a 4.5, they would probably still give it the blue label because it's not really going to hurt the grade at that point. But you don't get a gold label with this because it's not witnessed. So sometimes people ask about that. It doesn't mean it's confirmed Stanley. It could be a fake. It's just that they're writing that that mark is there. So that's a risk you take. If you decide you want to pay extra for that, that is a risk you take. It is probably real, but you don't know for sure. Now, I had this one going for 45,000. It went for 48,000. Now, I would have had it going for about 42, but because of that little signature note there, I gave it a little bit extra because I know that even though it's not a witness signature, you do still tend to get a bit of a benefit from that. So this beat my estimate by 7%. We take a look over at GPA. And we can see that sale right here, the signed by Stan Lee. They put that little notation here in GPA. This is one of the pricing tools that I use for pricing comics. See that $48,000 sale. If we go to the 4.5, we can see that really this book has been hovering around the same price point for a while. This is a book that I've said seems like it really has probably bottomed out or close to it in a lot of grades. Now, if you're looking to spend tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars on a comic like this one, pay the like $10 or whatever for GPA. Look at the prices, make sure that you are getting it for a reasonable price because a lot of these have really reached that point again. And you can see here for 2023, it's been bouncing between, low end around 35,000, high end 46,000. And we don't really know. We could look at each one of these and see page quality and all that kind of stuff. But This was a strong sale in my opinion. This was a really solid sale. Maybe they paid a little extra for that signature, but regardless, a good looking book, no Marvel chipping on the side there, pretty decent colors and everything. But yeah, strong sale for Amazing Fantasy 15. Now the next one, this was one that I think I posted about this one on Instagram because this sale was pretty crazy. This is a comic called This Magazine is Haunted, issue number 16, 9.2. Believe this is single highest graded. Yeah. Oh, no, two. So 2 and 9.2, none higher. It's a Steve Ditko underwater zombie cover. You can see it in the description here. This is a very expensive book in any grade, but this one had never sold in a 9.2 before, also white pages. I estimated that it would go for 19,000. Just crushed my estimate. I went for 28,800, 52% above my estimate. But if we go and take a look at this book, just so you can get an idea what this book sells for in other grades as well, it's an expensive book across the board. I believe there are only 3 graded higher than a 6.5, something like that. I think there's an 8.5 and those 2 9.2s. But you can see here a 5.5 going for 5,500, 4.0 going for 2,200. We had this 6.0 going for 5,760. That was a few years ago, though. But that's where it gets real tough to estimate what kind of jump you're going to get up into that 9.2. And clearly, there were at least a couple of people that really wanted it, and they bid against each other. And I feel like this was a very strong sale for this book. So 28,800 beat my estimate by 52%. All right, the next one is actually going to be a twofer. We're going to talk about 2 of these that sold. It was Fantastic Four #1. Both of these sales were strong sales. We've got a 4.5 and there was also a 3.0. This 4.5 went for $20,880. Its record was 36,000. So it has retreated quite a bit, but I had it going for 18,000. So this beat my estimate by 16%. It's not an especially bright copy or anything. That's one of the things you'll really notice with this book a lot is that you do get a lot of this kind of like yellowing to the whites on the cover. But yeah, again, another book that I felt was a very strong sale. And if we go check that one out, and again, that's strong sale relative to where they've been. Obviously, this is not hitting a new record. The record is significantly above this. But when you look at where this book has been selling, I mean, you can see here, just going back, and if you're not familiar with GPA, you can see you've got the 90-day average, the 12-month average. So it sold above both the 12-month average, the 2023 average, the 90-day average. And if we take a look at the details here, you can see it has that little uptick here. Again, another book similar to what we saw with Amazing Fantasy 15. Maybe it's leveling off some here. It is still pretty elevated from where it was prior to the comic boom. I mean, if you look at 2020, it did have a peak sale around 19,000, but a lot of sales in the 12,000, 13,000 range. So you could say there may be some risk with this one. I would be a little cautious with Fantastic Four #1. And this comes from someone like, this is what I tell people. I'm not trying to push books or anything like that, especially not books I own. I have a Fantastic Four #1 up there. It is for sale. And I'm saying be cautious right now with this book. I do think that there is still some potential downside with it. Now, there was also a 3.0 that sold immediately after. And here we got a 3.0 off-white pages, went for 13,200. That one had a prior record of 26,100. So it's almost been cut in half, but I had it going for 11,000. So again, this one beat my estimate by 20%. And this one, it's got the tape there. You know, some people aren't going to like the tape, but I'd say the whites are a little whiter on this copy. It's definitely something that I know can play a big role in this book because it really impacts what the colors look like on this book. But if we take a look at a 3.0, similar stuff here. I mean, you can see the 12-month average, the 2023 average, you know, it's above those. It's above some of these low sales that we had from 2023. I mean, look at the recent sales, 10,200, 12,000, 10,800, 9,200, 1260 is above all of those. So that was a very strong sale for that book. Now, does it mean that, you know, this book is coming back, or does it just mean that was one strong sale? It's hard to say. But it is something to be, you know, make a note of, that we are seeing some strong sales with some of these big Silver Age keys. And we've got more coming up next. So this next one here, We have Incredible Hulk #1 in a 2.0, went for 11,400. I had this book going for 10,000, so it beat my estimate by 14%. Prior record was 20,000. So you'll see a very similar trend with a lot of these books. From the comic boom, a lot of these books have been cut in half or close to it, but all of these seem to be holding up pretty well right now at these price points. This is a pretty good looking 2.0. You've got some little pieces out of here, you've got some creasing and everything, but nice colors. The main image is nice. And so I've had some conversations and comments recently with people about things like this, where someone will say, like, oh, there's a piece missing on the cover. That's a terrible looking 2.0. And it's like, it's a 2.0. Like this is not a mid-grade copy, a high-grade copy. This is almost as low as you can go. And so if you have a 2.0 that looks this presentable, that is a good looking 2.0. It's going to have creases. It's going to have this stuff. The only way you're going to have a 2.0 that doesn't have that is if you have a bunch of spine splitting and a detached cover. There are better looking 2.0s. There are great looking low grade copies, but those are more the exception than the norm. And so I think sometimes people get real focused on some of these 2.0s that look like high grade copies. And that's not common. I mean, this is a good looking 2.0 in my opinion, and had a solid sale. If we take a look at Hulk #1, this is one that, at least when I've been checking previously, it does still feel elevated. I would be fairly cautious around Hulk #1. And if we go down to a 2.0, these books don't sell nearly as often, but this does seem in line. If you actually look at the long term, kind of like slow uptick of this book, this does actually seem like it's in line. Like for this grade, this 2.0, I think that was a very reasonable pickup. And then, because like this is where it's a little tough. Like you've got this 3.0 that went for 1270. I wonder if there was something really wrong with that book. And we can't see it. Maybe it was an eBay sale. Maybe it was an auction. You can see right around Christmas. Maybe it just went freakishly low because of that. I have no idea. But you can see like this 18,600 for a 2.5. That feels very high. Like this feels like, a pretty elevated price. Take a look at that one. This sold on January 1st. And again, it's a pretty decent looking 2.5. It's got the creases, got a little piece out of the corner here, a decent looking 2.5, but 18.6, that was I would have been wanting to pay more around where this sale was, around 15, maybe even like 13.5, 14, somewhere in that range for a 2.5. I feel like this is going to hurt. That 18.6, it's going to take a little while probably for that one to recover. If you've watched Mickey's recent video about what was it? It was Schrodinger's comic. And it was basically about your buy-in price and how that impacts your return long-term, basically. And like this is an example where I feel like that's a pretty big overpay given current prices. I mean, look, a 2.0 going for 11.4, 3.0 going for 12.7, 3.5 going for 15.6. Like this was more than the 3.5. So this is the type of thing where maybe you don't care. That's one part of it. But if you do care, make sure you have like pricing services like this. Look at these numbers and make sure that, yeah, you don't have to pay exactly in line. I mean, I get it. Like not everybody is buying for investment, that kind of thing, but you're spending about 20 grand. It's probably worth the $10 to check out pricing. All right, let's check out the next one here. I feel like this is the first time I've seen one of these books beat my estimates in a while. Another big Silver Age key. We've got X-Men #1 in a 4.5. Went for $11,100, just barely beat my estimate. I had to go in for 10,500, beat my estimate by 6%. Now, this is a book that went totally nuts during the comic boom. It had a peak sale of 32,600. This one, it's been cut by like 70%, 65 to 70%, just absolutely killed since those peak prices. Now, it got out of hand too. I mean, that's the thing. And so let's check where this X-Men #1, this sales price really sits compared to where we might expect this to go. Because like I said, we've been talking about a lot of the really big Silver Age keys, and they're all beating my estimates by anywhere from about 10 to 20%. And those are solid sales. Those are showing some strength there. Now, if we go down to that 4.5, we take a look at a 4.5. Again, you can see it's above those prior averages. This one was on a downtrend, but it's been flat for looks like about a year, give or take. This is definitely a little uptick here, but based on what we've seen for the prior year, I mean, look at all these sales. 10,200, 10,250, 10,700, 10,200, 97.45. I mean, all of these underneath that other sale. So this was a solid sale, and not some crazy number, but beating my estimate. And so that's the type of thing that I'm looking for. Are we having sales now consistently get around or beat my estimates for these books? And for these big Silver Age keys, that's more or less what I'm seeing here. And they have really flattened out for almost a year on this case. I mean, yeah, it kept coming down a little bit, but we're talking about 10%, 15%. All right, now let's jump to the Bronze Age. This has been a book that's been getting talked about a lot lately because of the whole comic scam thing, because of the person swapping in green label books, missing Marvel value stamps into Hulk 181. So just something to be aware of, be on the lookout for that kind of thing. Be extra cautious. But I had this one going for 12,000, went for 10,500. This is one of the books that didn't beat my estimate. Now, is it possible that that's related to that scam, that people are nervous about this book? I don't know. It could be. It could be something that people were thinking about with this. The prior record was 22,800. So again, a book that has been cut in half. But if we take a look at the 9.4, you can see it still seems like this one's trending down. That's the other part of it. It's like maybe this one still should be trending down some. If we look at the 2023 prices, this is lower than every 2023 price. And so that's why this one did go below my estimates. I mean, going on any recent sales, this was a low sale. If we go back to before the comic boom, this book was going for about $8,500 to $9,500. So 10,500 doesn't seem very unreasonable. I mean, that was 3 years ago now. And to think that this book could reasonably be $1,000 more after 3 years, you would hope so. I mean, with what you normally see with Hulk 181, you would think that this is probably a pretty reasonable place for this book to be. I don't think this is a bad pickup. Here's that book. I mean, it's a white pages copy too. I mean, everybody's always telling me, oh, the white pages, they got to sell for more. Well, it didn't in this case, right? So it doesn't always sell for more. This is one where it actually sold for less than all prior sales. And this is actually a pretty good looking copy. This is one where I've talked about how you get different shades of orange in the background here. And there was that 9.8 that sold during the big Heritage auction, the signature auction, that I thought just didn't look as nice. It was a white page copy, but it had a lighter orange background. I like the deeper orange, almost red, where it just makes everything pop a little bit more. And so this is a nice looking copy, nice color strike, and went for the lowest price for over a year. So I think that this was, looking at prior sales, I think this is a pretty good pickup, even though it went below my estimates, 13% below my estimate. I think this was a pretty good buy. All right, now the next one here, one that I'm always interested in, and it's the same grade that I own. So I was definitely paying attention to this one. The second Golden Age book that we're talking about here, we've got a Crime Suspense Stories number 22 and a 5.0 that went for $9,000. I had it going for $8,500. Prior record was $8,700. So this beat my estimate by 6%, and it was a new record in grade. So yeah, the pre-code horror, especially the big books, the books that people are going after, even though this one has a lot more on census, this book is one of the most iconic pre-code horror books and Golden Age books in general. And so if you go down to the census, I mean, for a Golden Age book, there's quite a few. There are 385 universals, 426 total. That's a lot for the Golden Age. But there's also a lot of people that would want to own this book, being one of those most iconic books out there. Honestly, I still wouldn't sell mine for 9,000, even though that's now the new record. I don't see myself letting mine go for that price either. I like the book too much. And so that's the thing you always got to think about as well. It's like, especially with a book that is more rare, I mean, and yeah, a lot for the Golden Age, but still relatively rare. It's all about what's available. So yeah, Crime Suspense Stories 22, new record, $9,000. All right, now we've got another Golden Age book. one of my favorite books of the Batman run. We have Batman number 3. This one is a restored copy, a slight restoration C1. You can see small amount of color touch on cover. And this is a 7.5 that went for $7,800. I had it going for 7,000, beat my estimate by 11%. Small amount of color touch is tricky. It could be a lot when it's this kind of black cover and it's a C1, meaning it's marker, so you have to generally cut it out. I've seen a couple high grade copies, and they might have all been the same one of this book sell on Instagram, and this could be the same one. I can't remember if it was graded or not, the one that I saw on Instagram, but regardless, I'm not certain where the color touch is on this one. We could probably check the grader's notes. Maybe it says around where it is. It is amateur, but it's not always easy to detect on a cover like this. Let's see if we've got the grader's notes here. So it says small amount of color touch on full bottom front cover. Okay, so that means down here. There it is. Okay, so now you can see it. All of this. You see that light shade there? All color touch. So if you want it, even though it says small amount and it says C1, you would basically have to cut off the entire bottom little, like maybe quarter of an inch of this cover. And you can see the little bleed through into the white here. And that's how you'd have to get rid of it. And so what's that going to do to the grade? That's the question. If you wanted to get this back to Universal, if you had to take off basically a strip off the bottom of the cover, what is that going to do to the grade? I don't know. It might not hurt it too bad. I mean, being as nice as this copy is, that still might have been worth it. This still might have been worth it to pick up, because we did have a 5.0. Now, granted, it was a White Pages copy, all of that. And, you know, you often do get some type of premium, especially on Heritage with White Page copies. And we had a 5.0 that sold for $10,800. You know, we had a 3.0 a year ago go for $4,800. We had a 1.5, 4,350. A lot of price compression, it seems, around here. We had the Promise go for $9,000 at a 4.0. I mean, if you can still get a 4.5 or a 5, you're probably doing okay. You know, and so if you think that you can have that removed and you can still get like a 4.5, I think I would want to be a 5, hopefully. I think you're still probably doing okay with it. So not really a bad purchase, but a little bit of risk there, because I'm not real certain. I mean, that we're thinking that's probably all that's there. That is probably all that's there, but I'm not certain how bad that's going to hurt it. If you treated it like there was like bug chew all along the bottom, that's very similar to what that might end up looking like. And would they still give that a 5.0? Maybe, maybe not. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody has it removed, but we'll see, because that'll definitely impact the visual appeal of this book. I mean, it looks really, really nice like this. And do you want to take away that visual appeal? All right, now next, one of the few books that went below my estimate. And after that big sale during the signature auction too, this is Showcase number 4, first appearance of the Flash, book that is one of the books that's considered to have started the Silver Age. I had it going for $8,500. Its prior record was $10,870. Went for $7,800, 8% below my estimate. Not a big deal, but this is a pretty nice looking 1.5. I mean, yeah, you've got what looks to be probably some foxing. Yeah, it looks like some foxing up here. There's wear along the spine, rusty staples. It's a 1.5, right? Like there's this tear here, but one of the big things to me is, are you missing any big pieces from that cover? And it's not. Like this is a pretty solid looking 1.5. And so 7,800 just doesn't seem that unreasonable to me. I would say it's more or less in line. I mean, if we take a look at Showcase number 4, this isn't a book that really goes up a lot, up or down a lot over time. It's like a lot of the big DC keys relatively flat on their pricing. But yeah, I mean, take a look at this 1.5 here. I mean, look at that. Like this book from, I mean, what is this? 2015 all the way up to 2022, basically sold for the same price. I mean, 7 years, same price. Then you had this big spike, probably comic boom more or less, but it was 2023 with that spike. So not really. Oh, in late 2023. So I wouldn't even say that's comic boom. Like just a big spike in the price, now coming back down. I don't know. now I'm wondering, like, should it still be flat? I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to say with this one. I feel like this book doesn't go for as much as you think it should. I mean, it is one of the big Silver Age keys, and the more interesting thing to me is, I mean, look at the census. 426 universals compared to, let's see, do we have, I mean, let's look at like that XMen one. I think it's around 6,000. So if we look at XMen number 1 and we go to the census for that book. Okay. Yeah. 6,000 total, 4,589 universals, 10 times as many, you know, and granted, a 1.5 of XMen number 1 doesn't go for $7,800 either, but it's not 10 times as much. They just, yeah, the showcase number 4, just, I still feel like it doesn't get the respect it deserves. I'm not a huge fan of the cover personally, but I still think this one just always seems like it goes cheaper than it should. All right, now another big Silver Age key. I mean, it's just been, there were tons of them, tons of big Silver Age keys that were selling in this auction. We had 15752. Journey into Mystery, number 83, a 3-0. This one I had going for 6,300, went for 7,200. Prior record was 13,225. So again, just like all these others, they've been cut nearly in half, but still beating my estimate. Beat my estimate by 14%. It's got the custom label. It's a pretty solid looking book. Looks like it probably had color touch. I mean, if you look at this, did somebody rip off some color touch, or is that just a missed piece? It might, I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe someone just ripped off a piece, but this is often where you do see color touch. And like, I mean, look where it's all located, like right here on the M, right here along this, right here on where he's throwing or he's swinging his hammer around. This was probably color touch removal. I wouldn't be real shocked about that. Solid sale, decent looking 3-0. Now, the last Silver Age book we're going to talk about, another strong sale. Beat my estimate again. This is Fantastic Four number 5, first appearance of Dr. Doom. I had it going for 6,200, went for 6,900, beat my estimate by 11%. Prior record, 13,200. So again, a book that has been cut in half. But if we take a look at Fantastic Four number 5, and we go down to a 4-0. You can see that sale here. And again, just like a little bump back up. And so, yeah, I mean, it wasn't the high for the year. I mean, we had the $7,900 sale, but prior to that, 64, 6,500, 58, 55, 68, it just kind of seemed like it was still trending down. This is one though, and I've said it before, and I'm standing by that. I would still be cautious about this book. I mean, just looking at where it was prior to the comic boom, that big spike, it's still well above those prices. I mean, this was a book that in 2020 was going for around $5,000, 4,500 to 5,000, and it's up at 7,000 now. So I could see there's still being some downside risk, at least at this grade. Again, you want to check each grade, see what your pricing is comparatively. But this one does feel like there's still some risk there, some downside risk with FF number 5. All right. Last book we're going to talk about. Got Giant Size XMen number 1 in a 9.4. This one was also a book that failed to meet my estimates. I had it going for 7,000, went for 6,300. Pretty decent looking copy. The only thing, it's got this going on up here. This is one of the things I talk about with Giant Size XMen number 1. I often see edge damage in these cases for whatever reason. The CGC cases, and I know some people have argued with me that they don't think it's happening in the case. I almost guarantee you it's happening inside the case. There's something about the way, like with the cut of this book, that it just seems to shift weird and hit the inside of the well strange, and you often get little indentations along the side. There aren't any others on this copy. There are other ones that do have stuff like that. So keep an eye out for it. Just something to always look for. But I mean, that looks like that's probably a pretty, I'm assuming it's folded over. It maybe it's not, maybe it's cut that way, but I doubt it. I'm assuming that's folded over. That's a pretty big, folded over corner. And I imagine it was not like that when it was graded. So just something where maybe that caught some people's attention. They decided to bid lower, and that's why it went a little low. It's hard to say for sure. This book in a 9.4 peaked at 22,400 during the comic boom. This is another one, just like X-Men #1. I mean, you can see it's been cut by about 65 to 70%. It's just one of those books that went really, really crazy during the comic boom, and it's retreated quite a bit. I still don't think it's all the way back yet, though. If we take a look at a 9.4, I mean, you can see where this book was again prior to the comic boom. I mean, you had high sales up here, but that was late in the year. This book really prior to the comic boom, this period here was going for anywhere from around, you can say low end 3,600, high end 4,800. So we'll say like maybe like 4,200. And it's still sitting at 6,300 on a low sale. So this is another book that I would personally be cautious about. I would not be jumping into giant size X-Men #1 right now. Now, if you get some fantastic deal, I mean, that's always an exception, but generally I would still be wary of this book. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this video, saw some cool books, saw that, I mean, maybe this was an anomaly. Maybe this was because people were all hyped up from the signature auction, so they were still paying more here. But out of the 13 books that I looked at for this specific video, 10 of them beat my estimates. Only 3 went low, and none of those 3 went low by a lot. But really, like a lot of these big keys, maybe they're turning a corner. You can't say for sure, but definitely something to keep an eye on, because quite a few of them look like they've been flat for a while, and it might at least be worth keeping an eye on. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell, all that kind of stuff. I got more videos over here. If you'd like to watch some of my other videos, subscription button is right here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video.